Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. My name is Lorna Matern, and I'm the Executive Director at United Counseling Service. I'd like to welcome our staff, clients, community partners, and board members. And of course, I'd like to I'd like to welcome our honored guest here this morning. We have Senator Brian Campion, who just said that Dick Sears is running late, so he'll be sneaking in.
At which time we should all pause and say,
Yeah, stand up and
Oh my
take a
God.
come on, we started like 5 minutes ago.
Come on, Sears. We have also Jim Carroll, welcome. Tim Corcoran, good morning.
Good morning.
Dave Durfee, I don't think we've met, hi.
Morning.
Nice to meet you. Mary Morrissey, Chris Bates, and Nelson Brownell. Oh, you scared me. United Counseling Service celebrated 60 years of providing services to our community, living our mission of building a stronger community by empowering individuals and families to live healthy and meaningful lives since 1958. We have done this through providing a comprehensive system of care for children, families, and individuals living with mental illness, intellectual disability, or substance abuse disorders. We provide services to most vulnerable citizens, whether they have an intellectual disability and living in one of our group homes, accessing early care and education through Head Start or Early Head Start, or work with one of our therapists in our outpatient program. We provide services to 3,000 individuals, which is actually 1 in 12 Bennington County residents, while employing more than 300 staff through a combined annual budget of roughly $22 million for fiscal year 18. We offer services through 5 major service divisions: outpatient and substance abuse, community rehabilitation and treatment, developmental services, Head Start and Early Head Start, and youth and family services in 16 locations throughout the county. Of those, we have 4 group homes that we provide 24/7 care to those folks who can't live on their own safely. I'm excited to let you know that UCS earned a 3-year certification as a Center of Excellence, which is a process through Vermont Care Partners and the Jeffords Institute. A Center of Excellence is known by the entire community as a great place to work and a great place to get care. Whoops. It is an organization that is an integral part of the health neighborhood, providing access to high-quality, comprehensive whole-person care with excellent outcomes and world-class customer service. And we are one of only 3 agencies in Vermont who have earned this certification. And we are an integral part of our health neighborhood through our work with our partners to provide the best possible care for our community. We know that in order to move our system forward and provide the best care, health and mental health integration, providing care coordination, and helping to overcome obstacles related to social determinants of health is more important than ever. UCS has a long and robust history of collaboration with many community partners. Working alongside our partners, we have built a network that promotes resilience and recovery and provides better outcomes for individuals and families that we serve. For instance, we partner with our local school districts and place full or part-time clinicians in schools throughout Bennington County. In fact, we have 9 schools throughout Bennington County that have clinicians that are providing therapy to children, education and consultation to staff, and crisis intervention. Our collaboration with the Blueprint for Health allows for part-time and full-time clinicians to be placed in 12 primary care and spoke practices throughout the county, providing immediate access to mental health and substance abuse treatment. And our I-Plan program provides support and counseling to those who are in custody of the Department of Corrections in order to decrease recidivism and increase success for living in the community. Our collaboration with corrections provides a high-quality continuum of service to reduce incarceration and recidivism and address mental health and substance use disorders, which creates both individual success and public safety for our community. I've asked Dan Murgis to come on up and talk with us about I-Plan Dan is the iPlan manager and an outpatient clinician.
Thank you, Lorna.
You're welcome, Dan.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here, particularly our senators and representatives. So I was sitting here trying to organize and settle my thoughts just before coming up here. I was thinking how valuable it is to have our senators and representatives here to give a human face to the kind of abstract concepts of politics and funding which indirectly affect all of our lives. And it's really relevant to the work that I do in iPlan with community members that are returning from periods of incarceration and are under supervision of the Department of Corrections, as they often struggle to navigate the complex and fragmented systems of care that they're kind of compelled to be involved with, including Department of Corrections, us at UCS. Oftentimes, DCF is involved in their families. We partner with Brock around transitional housing, and it can be really challenging to help folks navigate these different systems of care where one participant might have 5 different case managers at 5 different agencies. So it's really helpful when we have the opportunity to put a human face to an agency or a concept. So the iPlan program, iPlan stands for Individuals Planning for Life and Needs. And it is a grant-funded partnership. The grant comes from the Department of Corrections. It's about 6 years old, and we have a sub-grantee, Brock, to do transitional housing. And this iPlan was created as a response to, good morning.
Good morning.
Isn't this where we're all supposed to go? Oh, come on.
We're all supposed to sit up, say, what the hell? We're supposed to stand. That's what I said, and they laughed at me. Yeah. Come on. The upper chamber.
So, in the early 2000s, there were a number of concerns that the iPlan program sought to address. We had a rising prison population in the state and increasing rates of recidivism or reoffense. And iPlan is one of a number of grant-funded programs that is the purpose of which is to increase the continuity of care for community members returning from periods of incarceration. And in preparing for this, I reviewed statistics on the program, how many years we've been running, how many people we serve. And I'll run through some of those because I think they're valuable, and I think there are probably other occasions that are better time and place for statistics. But what I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about more is the questions that the program is trying to be a response to. So the statistics are, in the last 5 calendar years, we've served about 260 participants. And we average like 80 or 85 participants per year. And if you do the multiplication, like 80 or 85 people times 5 years, that's about 400 people. But we've only served about 260. And that is an indicator of, in fact, that the people that we serve are often, they come through our program more than once, which is really beneficial. It's not uncommon, like in the rehabilitation community, that people will, they need to go to rehab more than once before they get things right and they find their path to success. iPlan is a similar program in that we have people come through more than once, sometimes. We serve about 20 to 30 participants at a time, and we have a pretty small staff. There's myself as the program manager, we have a case manager, and ideally 2 clinicians. The last year or so we've been running with 1 clinician short, in part because we've been level funded and had to get creative about restructuring the program a little bit to make everything work. Our annual budget is a little over $400,000, and $120,000 of that goes to Brock for transitional housing. So the questions that we are trying to address with iPlan are things like, how can we better support these community members that are returning to us after a period of incarceration? And one of the big challenges is that our systems of care are so fragmented, as you all know, I'm sure, when you're looking at budgets and allocating funds for various agencies and organizations. There's a lot of them, and that the way that they're structured and the gaps between them, they're not that meaningful to people, to the participants in my program. But all of these various agencies and concerns and funding streams converge at the point of the person. And that's where we try to come up with a model that could be more responsive. So with iPlan being grant funded, one of the big obstacles we're able to remove is the need for someone to have health insurance. Because we're grant funded, someone doesn't have to have health insurance in order to get services through iPlan. That was previously a huge obstacle. Many folks coming back to the community after a period of incarceration didn't have health insurance, so when they were looking for services around substance use or mental health treatment, we first had to help them get medical insurance before they could get services here. With iPlan being grant funded, that's no longer an obstacle. We also, in terms of navigating the systems of care, iPlan has always had a case manager, which helps people to do things like build a resume in order to get a job. Also helps with finding housing if they're not, if they don't get housing through Brock, we can help them find housing, and to work on other independent living skills like scheduling, maintaining appointments, which is a huge thing. Many people who are under supervision of Department of Corrections, either on furlough or probation or parole, have numerous appointments every week that they have to keep track of. They may be meeting with us, their probation officer, someone at DCF, someone at Economic Services. They might have a couple of job interviews in a week, and that's a lot to keep track of. And it's not uncommon for us to hear that being on Department of Corrections supervision in the community is in many ways more challenging than being in prison. Because in prison, every day is kind of the same. You know what to expect. You know what the routine is. And in terms of, one of the big questions as an agency when we were initiating this partnership is trying to answer the question of what evidence-based support can we provide that would help to reduce recidivism. So in addition to offering one-on-one mental health counseling, we also offer one-on-one substance use counseling, case management, and intensive outpatient treatment, which is an evidence-based model for substance use recovery, and that's a 9-hour-a-week commitment. It's a class that meets 3 times a week, 3 hours each day. And that has been, that combination of supports is really helpful, getting people closer to that goal of being able to live independently and successfully in the community with lower rates of recidivism. I think that's all I've got.
All right.
I just do the talking, I don't get to ask for questions.
People might ask you, but not right now.
All right. I'm just asking questions.
Thanks, Dan. Before we continue, oops, Dan, you might need those.
I will at some point.
I wanted to take just a moment to introduce Polly Major. Good morning. Polly serves as Senator Patrick Leahy's field representative for Human Services in Vermont. Thanks for being here today. I think you're going to come up in a few minutes to chat a little bit, I think. That's right? Good. Let's see. Oh, there we go. I'm also excited to talk about a greater partnership with the town of Bennington and our Head Start and Early Head Start program. And as we develop work to build a Head Start, Early Head Start center on the grounds of the rec center. We are excited to work with the town to provide greater access to care for families and children living in Bennington. Providing good quality early care enables working parents to actually just work rather than to worry about whether or not their child is well cared for. And good quality early care helps build resiliency in children so they are better equipped to deal with life challenges as they grow. And we're at the beginning stages of that planning, and we're very excited to continue working with the town. Our relationship with Southwestern Vermont Health Center continues to grow over time. We know that enhanced coordination of mental health services in the emergency department and in the hospital setting is critical. The backups and long lengths of stay for adults and children experiencing a mental health crisis in the hospital emergency rooms is an egregious situation. The average wait time in the emergency department is 20 hours, although the maximum stay has been up to 31 days before somebody is able to have a psychiatric placement. The numbers of children being seen in the emergency department has increased, while the age of the children seen has decreased, sometimes as young as 6 years old. In December alone, our emergency services team provided 109 crisis assessments for children in the emergency department. Many children are brought to the emergency department from schools because when children act out in school, make threats to hurt themselves or others, are aggressive, schools often respond by sending children to the emergency department for a mental health screening. 82 to 86% of the children who present in the emergency department for mental health screenings simply go home afterwards. Just imagine if those children didn't go to the emergency department in the first place. We must do better, and we are. Leaders from Southern Vermont Health Center and UCS are meeting to explore options for how to provide better crisis care. We are working to create a mental health urgent care model to decrease emergency department utilization substantially and increase access to appropriate levels of care. We hope to pilot a program for children in the spring with the plan to expand the model to include adults as well. We are together submitting an application for a grant to One Care at the end of this month in hopes of getting funding to help us fund a joint program and a joint venture. There'll be more to come on that, not this morning, but eventually. A consequence, if you will, with the increased need to having emergency clinicians in the emergency department is a decrease in access to mobile crisis services to the community. Despite that, however, our crisis team does what they can to respond to community, particularly when we partner with local law enforcement. One of the many ways we partner with law enforcement is through Team 2 trainings. Team 2 is a training for first responders and mental health providers on how to respond to critical incidences and resolve the crisis together. I'd like Anna Madison, who's the manager of our emergency services team, and our Team 2 trainer to come on up and talk a little bit about that. Thanks, Anna.
First, I'd like to thank the legislature for the increases that we received last year. So it helped to retain staff. Mobile crisis, I began this like 4 or 5 years ago. My first call was actually my very first day with my supervisor. We were called to a scene at the BSP. We had a gentleman in the woods that wanted to hang himself. Just for a little bit of a twist, he didn't speak any English, so it was kind of a interesting situation. So we were able to, and the police were able to get him out of the woods, and we agreed to take him to our crisis center, where we then were able to observe him for a couple of weeks. We engaged him in some treatment. We were able to get some psychiatric medications for him, and we were able to return him to the community. I'm just going to shorten that case because there's other things that I really want to talk about with mobile crisis. We also respond, we work very closely with the courts. Emergency clinician will go into the courts and do court case screenings. We also do debriefings in the community. We work very closely with our community partners, which now I would like to thank the Southwestern Vermont Medical Center. I would like to thank the police departments, the law enforcement, the EMTs, the dispatchers that we talk to all the time. It's a you know, every day can be different. Sometimes we start out very slow, other days it's jam-packed. A couple of the other cases that we sometimes deal with is we will also pre-screen children so that they don't have to end up in the ED. We work closely with children with that. We also are willing to come to the Hill to screen individuals here so that my job is to keep them out of the ED if at all possible. Another part of law enforcement, I was asked to talk about a couple of cases that we've had. We had a gentleman in Pownell that was struggling, and we were able to work closely with BSP to be able to talk with him and have him come out. We also have worked with EMTs in the community that have, suffered from trauma. So it's kind of a mobile, it's a wide variety of things that we do. I can't really describe every single one of them, but if there's one that you would like to talk about or you'd like me to describe more. Law enforcement, again, is really what I'm pushing for. I'm a Team 2 trainer, and they work very well with us. I'd like to thank them for all their time, their energy. I've witnessed officers taking the time, talking to individuals, things that you don't always see and hear. Some of the descriptions we get from the media are awful, and I want to say that I've never had that experience with the law enforcement that I've worked with, and I'd like to thank them again for their time and empathy. Are there any questions? I had a big, long...
Well, one of the things that I asked Anna actually specifically to talk about is that it really struck me when I heard a story about the gentleman in Pownell, and that the state police called you in, and the gentleman had a gun, was threatening the gun, with the gun to use it, and Anna literally had a bulletproof vest on as she was talking with the person, along with the police, to help bring that person down and have them kind of surrender. And it really struck me that we don't pay enough for that.
Wasn't in the job description, was it?
Other duties as assigned, I mean, that's pretty significant. So it really struck me because not only do our staff on a day-to-day basis dealing with crises, they're dealing with life-threatening situations, their own life, really. And Anna and others are willing to put themselves there for the community and for the people that we serve. It was very significant to me when I heard that story, and so
I have a couple more.
I'm sure. Did you want to share anything else, or
I want to share that we go as far as we can. Sometimes we're one clinician. We will go mobile if we can. Sometimes it's just not possible. We're either tied up in the ED or on another case. But I want you to know that we will go anywhere. And with that being said, Vermont is, the back roads, the mountains. One of my worst calls was just up there, just up to Manchester, somewhere in Manchester on a mountain. There was a man live streaming Facebook that he was going to kill himself. I was asked to go up. It took me literally an hour and a half to get there to find this place with my GPS going on and off and the cell phone service going on and off. Again, we were able to do this on scene. We were able to screen him, make sure that he was safe. The police worked with him closely. Again, I can't say enough for the police officers that take the time, spend the time. The day that we were talking in Pownell, the police officer had worked with him all day long on the telephone just to find out if he was alive, to find out if they could establish a rapport, and they were able to. And then that allowed me to kind of go in and do my job. But without the state police and without the the law enforcement working and doing those things, would not be possible.
Thanks, Anna. Appreciate it.
Again, I'd like to recruit anybody that needs a job. Anybody, if you like holidays, I sometimes can get you off from holidays, but I want to tell you, please,
Or if you don't like holidays?
if you don't like holidays, I'll even work with that. But I'd like to say really recruiting, because we were able to retain, however, we are not able to recruit staff. So I'm here to say, if you're empathetic, you want a day that is different, you are law enforcement, military, nurses, anybody that would like to apply, we would really be open to that. So thank you.
Paul, you want to apply?
I think I have enough to do right now, but I will tell you that I do support Anna in her program, and I fully support United Counseling Services. It's not a commercial, but I'll tell you, without United Counseling Service, we'd be in a lot of trouble in this county, without a doubt. They come out, they deal with people that are on drugs, they deal with people that are intoxicated and suicidal, and we're fortunate to have you here, so thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. As you can see, we're very proud of the work that we do at UCS and proud of the partnerships that we have created to best respond to our community. And we all know we need to work together to make an impact. Partnering with our community to provide training and education is becoming increasingly important. There are 3 areas that are most concerning to us and our partners, and that's around childhood trauma, youth mental health, and suicide prevention. I want to provide you with some information before I call up one of our trainers to talk to you about that. But just to cover some of that information. So adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, are frequently heard terms in our society today. ACEs are when children experience violence, abuse, neglect, live with somebody with a substance abuse problem, or experience unrelenting stress. The more adverse childhood experiences a person has, the more likely they will experience physical, mental, or substance abuse disorders as an adult. ACEs are not rare. We all experience trauma of some kind in our lifetime, and in fact, 1 in 6 Vermonters have experienced 2 or more ACEs. And what does that mean? Higher healthcare costs, higher dropout rates, increased substance abuse, depression, anxiety, and suicide as an adult, to name a few. Creating trauma-informed services in schools and communities through training and education will make a significant impact. Another area of concern is youth mental health. Vermont teens are reporting feeling depressed and anxiety. More Vermont teens are feeling depressed and anxious. 20% of adolescents live with a mental health condition, and of those, 37% will drop out of school. Members of our community and school personnel need to know the signs of depression or other mental health issues to be able to best respond. And finally, we know that escalating suicide rates have affected nearly every demographic group in our country. In the US alone, there are 45,000 suicides a year. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in America, and that Vermont is the 11th highest rate of suicide in the country. We know that 1 in 10 Vermont high school students have made a plan of how they would commit suicide, and that 5% of Vermont students have actually attempted suicide. Unfortunately, suicide is not a rarity, and yet significant stigma remains, which prevents people from seeking help. These are critical public health issues, and with any public health issue, training and education are key components to increasing awareness, reducing stigma, and increasing access to care. As a designated agency, we provide outreach, training, and education, and ultimately help decrease stigma. I'm excited to share that we are providing extensive training to the public, our partners, and schools on trauma, suicide prevention and intervention, and mental health. And I'd like to have Katie Aiken come up, who's our community manager at Youth and Family Services, who will discuss some of the evidence-based practices we are using. Katie is one of our trainers here at UCS.
Thank you, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be able to talk about something that's so important right now in the community. So as Lorna mentioned, education about mental health issues in the community is so important right now. It just makes sense that in order to accomplish any progress in the prevention and treatment of mental health conditions, we need to directly address the stigma, as well as become better about talking about mental health on a regular basis in our communities. I have been so fortunate to be able to expand my initial role since joining UCS 4 years ago to provide some valuable and important trainings. Youth and Adult Mental Health First Aid is an international program that instructs participants on how to help someone who may be developing a mental health problem or experiencing a mental health crisis. Just as medical first aid gives the person the knowledge to respond in a medical emergency, mental health first aid trains a person to identify, understand, and respond to signs of a mental illness or substance use disorder. So this course also focuses on breaking down the stereotypes and stigmas of mental illness, which helps increase the willingness to connect to needed services and to achieve wellness. UCS offers both the youth and adult trainings regularly and is open to everyone in the community. We have also completed these trainings by request for school systems and other agencies, and I will be completing additional certifications soon. With this program, they're specifically designed to be able to train emergency responders, law enforcement, and even veterans. Understanding Adverse Experiences, or ACEs, is another training that UCS has been providing for approximately 1.5 years now. It is sponsored by Building Flourishing Communities, and its curriculum was designed based off a study that was conducted in the early 1990s that looked at the social determinants of health. It discovered that childhood trauma is a public health epidemic that has been hidden from view. The biologic impact of adverse childhood experiences has enormous effects on all of our community service systems due to its intergenerational impacts. This training explains the biologic implications of trauma, the importance of building resilience as a protective factor, and aims to create a community understanding of this public health issue. This training has increasingly gained momentum since I first began offering it over a year ago, and since then I have had several requests from several area social service providers, state workers, and child care providers, just to name a few. The success of this training has even led the SVSU school district to have all 87 of their paraeducators trained in ACEs, as well as all the teachers in the Arlington School District. And Southern Vermont College has also had all of their social service students and faculty trained as well. And this training has been well received in the community and has helped so many groups of people gain a new understanding of trauma. To help provide education on the importance of suicide prevention, I recently became certified in November through a program created by Vermont Suicide Prevention Center to conduct suicide prevention and awareness trainings. Suicide is the 8th leading cause of death in Vermont.
I was thinking, wait a minute.
No, not actually, in Vermont.
Got it.
And it's the 2nd leading cause of death for Vermonters ages 15 to 34. One person dies every 3 days in this state from suicide. I will be holding these trainings community-wide, beginning in the next couple of months, with the goal of helping participants to become informed in awareness strategies for prevention, helping them to identify warning signs and risk factors, and equip them with the information to be able to offer help and resources. It is my hope that through sharing this information, to create a community mind shift regarding suicide, building the topic out and bringing the topic out into the open to reduce stigma and empowering others to save lives. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. Actually, if whenever you get a chance to go to the ACEs training, you should take it. I've participated in it. It's really amazing. Katie does a great job. All of the trainings are great, but that one in particular is really significant. Changes are ahead for the Department of Aging and Independent Living, or DALE. It provides oversight to our Developmental Services Division. Before I get into that further, I'd like to bring up Courtney Randall, who works in our Developmental Services. And I just simply ask Courtney to talk to you about the people she works for and about her work. So come on up, Courtney.
Hello.
Whoops.
Courtney Randall. I'm program manager for Shared Living at the Developmental Services building there. I started here in 2016. Prior to working at UCS, I did 10 years worth of factory work, and it just never felt like I was doing what I should be doing in life. I started in June of 2016 in community sports program, and with that being said, I was responsible to go out in the community and assist the people that we work with, gaining relationships with others in the community that are just not people that we have here, part of the program. So when you sign up and apply for a job, you have these expectations that are given to you of your job, your title and your duties. But I can honestly say when I started working at United Counseling, it's so much more than what's expected of us. We are so much more to these individuals that we serve than just the person that takes them to the store or teaches them how to cook or provides paperwork for their medical appointments. We are the person that advocates for them when they don't understand what's going on around them. We are a voice when they cannot communicate. We are the person that brings them to their first show on Broadway or to the Monument, although they've lived their whole life in Bennington. Just little experience that you and I take for granted every day. These guys really take pride and value, and it's the small things that we don't realize that we can do for them that make their life that much more valuable. I feel like I can speak for many of us in this room when I say that no matter what program you work in, when we work for these individuals that we are serving, it's so much more than than just coming in every day to 8 to 4 and then leaving. Example being, one day I was on my way to work, I had it all planned out, which is something you should never do because it never goes, goes as it should. And I received a phone call from a home provider, and I I had a person in the ED who is nonverbal. The home provider was in panic mode. I don't know what to do. It's clear that this individual needs some medical attention. I'm not sure what's going on. Nonverbal. Can you please come up here? So of course, instantly everything that I had planned for the day was just dropped. It did not matter. I did not even make it to the office. My first stop was the emergency room. Now, reason being that it was so important for me to be there is that this individual will only communicate with her facilitated communication device with certain people. She only allows certain people to use this device with her. And I was lucky enough to be one of those people. So I went up there and...
What's the device?
It's like a tablet. Facilitated communication would be like a tablet. So what you do is you facilitate them. Sometimes it's just pressure points to help them reset so they can type and get their their thoughts out, their feelings out, what's going on. So with that being said, it takes a lot of trust, right? So they don't want just anybody coming up and just saying, okay, I'm going to type with you, because you could be typing for them. So they have to really trust you for you to do this with, depending on the person that you're doing it with. So I went up to the emergency room and, this individual was lashing out, just very upset and, lots of pain. It was very clear that there was something going on. So needless to say, I was able to to have her express what was going on. Come to find out, this individual had to be sent to Albany Med through a helicopter. She had a really bad infection. So my whole day was spent in the ED, and then it did not end at 4 o'clock. My day ended when her day was settled, which meant I drove to Albany Med to ensure that she was receiving the proper care. I drove to Albany Med. I was there till about 10 p.m. It was not, something I had to do. It was something I wanted to do because I wanted to make sure that she was heard. She was able to say what was going on, what her triggers were, what she was feeling, were the meds working, all these things that she could not say if I was not there to assist her, to communicate for her, to help her communicate. That's one of the many things we do, honestly. It can be something as extreme as that, or it could be something as I've mentioned earlier, taking somebody kayaking for the first time and just, giving them that experience that they've never had the opportunity to have. Teaching them how to cook a meal on their own so they don't have to have someone with them 24/7. Every day when we walk into that building, we know each and every little milestone every consumer takes or has and does. We had a gentleman come in the other day who generally walks in with a walker, and he didn't have his walker. And every staff in that building recognize that, because we're not just there to do our job. We're there to make sure that we're paying attention to these things and making them feel good and encourage them to be the best that they can be, because we all deserve that value of care, that level of care, and that lifestyle. We all deserve to be able to do what we want to do and to be encouraged to do better, and not just come in and say, okay, I'm going to speak to my case manager. We're not just case managers. We're not just direct staff workers. We are literally their life. We are a big part of their life, and I'm proud to say that I work here. I'm proud to say that every day I come in here, I never feel like I'm coming to work. I'm never obligated to be here. I'm excited to come into this building every morning. And it's not even just for the consumers. It's the staff around us. We all support each other. If there's something that I would need to better support, an individual, other staff around are always willing to help.
How many patients or clients do you deal with on a
Daily. Daily? Sorry.
Sure. Or whatever.
Yeah, it depends. So the thing is, we have different programs over at the DS building. We have a families, we have shared living, and we have SILP. But again, as mentioned, we don't specify, we don't divide ourselves like that. We all support each other. So I would say on an average, there's at least 30 a day that we have an encounter with.
Each staff.
Each staff, yeah. And I can walk into the room, and somebody from a different program, a consumer from a different program can come up to me because they just want to talk, and we're not ever like, oh, that's not us. Like, you got to go to your case manager. We all collaborate and work together and, you know, support these guys. We do camp. You know, we take time, personal time away from our families to make sure that they can have an experience such as attending a week at camp, you know, just as I would want to have. So we do a lot of work outside of work, and not because we have to, but because we want to. And it's rewarding when you can go home and know that that little thing that you just did for the day, what seems little to you is huge for them. And you get that thank you letter, or you get that poster from that person the next day saying how great you are. So I'm just honored to say that I work here, and it truly is a great place to work and get care. And I'm not just saying that because you're standing here. It might work, but
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. So that's just a little bit about what we do over in DS.
Thanks, Courtney.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
And there are 195 consumers that work within developmental services total.
Is that like is that pretty consistent over the year?
I'm looking at Bonnie, who's
Hi, I'm the developmental services as well. Yeah, that stays pretty consistent. We have some additional funding programs that allow us to tap and meet other families that sometimes, what we are seeing is, you know, the June grads that are coming through, that number is increasing a little.
The what?
June grads, so individuals that are coming out of high school, transitioning into our support. So they can't receive our supports until they've graduated from high school. So we keep track of that so that we can report that to Dale to let them know what we need for funding on an annual basis. I will say that I know Dale is looking great now at, you know, looking at DS as a whole. They have contracted Burns and Associates. Are you gonna
hold
go
that
on
thought.
Okay.
I'm right with you.
All right.
So as you know, the Department of Mental Health has implemented payment reform as January 1st. And payment reform moves us from a fee-for-service model, which is expensive, to a per member per month model, which allows us more flexibility in how we provide service. Department of Aging and Independent Living, or DALE, is also in the process of creating payment reform. Bonnie started talking a little bit about it, so bear with me. It's going to take a few minutes to kind of explain what our situation is. And when I say our, I don't mean just UCS, I mean the whole Vermont system of care and how we work with folks with intellectual disabilities. As I talk about this, please keep in mind Courtney and what she was talking about, because this is something that we'll lose. So Dale has brought in Burns and Associates, who is a policy group out of Arizona, to look at our DS system of care and make recommendations for system change and payment reform. The apparent intent of the recommendations are to provide better and more efficient services to consumers. Burns and Associates have worked with several other states, including Rhode Island. Here are a few important points that you need to know about Rhode Island. Burns and Associates created Project Sustainability, which is the name of their fee-for-service reimbursement system that was enacted by the General Assembly in 2011. Now remember, health and mental health are moving away from fee-for-service because it is expensive. Burns and Associates recommended a fee-for-service system. And currently that's on the table for the possibility of DS services. Project Sustainability introduced the use of standardized assessment tools to identify each client's needs, which is then translated into 5 levels of funding, okay? As a result, providers were expected to stretch their dollars without compromising level of service. Now, we've all had to do that over the years. It's not something new, but this is very significant. Project Sustainability forced providers like UCS to cut wages to their staff, which led to high turnover rates and an unstable workforce. As a result, they had to provide care in segregated day centers and sheltered workshops. By 2014, the U.S. Department of Justice criticized the state for violating the integration mandate of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The U.S. District Court of Rhode Island is in the 3rd year of monitoring the state progress in implementing a federal civil rights consent decree.
You're talking about Rhode Island.
I'm talking Rhode Island.
Okay. Because I didn't remember the...
Yeah, sorry, talking about Rhode Island. This consent decree seeks to integrate adults with intellectual disabilities in their community, which means, of course, that they weren't integrated in their community. This year's Case for Inclusion report, which is the preeminent annual ranking of how well states serve Americans with intellectual disabilities, ranked Rhode Island as number 32 in the country. Vermont is ranked number 3. We know that people with intellectual disabilities have full and meaningful lives in Vermont. They have jobs, they have friends, they live in good quality homes with the necessary supports, and they are included in our community. Now, as Courtney was referring to, should a person with a disability have the same rights and opportunities as we do? In other words, is it okay if somebody with an intellectual disability has a lesser life? Of course not. So why take a system of care that is third in the country for services with individuals with intellectual disability to become less than that? So I have a call to action to you and to all of you, is to ask questions, do research, advocate, challenge the information given to you by Burns and Associates, because when you do, it will become very clear that this is not how we want to provide care in Vermont. So again, think about what Courtney was talking about, the passion that she has for the people that we work for, and decide whether or not you're willing to take that risk. So thank you in advance for your advocacy on this. So at this time, I'd like to ask if Polly Major could come up. And we'll,
Before that, can I have one comment to that?
Of course you can.
Thanks. I'm Anya Reeve, I'm the medical director, and before I came here, I worked in New Mexico for almost 30 years and worked closely with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities since 1996 through 2014. New Mexico went to using the supports intensity scale, which was devised by the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disability. It's a valid and replicated method for looking at how much supports people need. The reason I bring that up is it was developed not to be applied to fee-for-service funding. And Burns and Associates are using it and tying it to this fee-for-service. So in looking at the research and the model, it's important to look at the different components that is going in here and how they're being applied. So the supports intensity scale, if it were applied to everybody, might be a useful way to standardize and be an evidence-based practice for what we're doing now. But it shouldn't be going into this economic model that's going to destroy the kind of flexibility we have.
So may I ask, where's Burns and Associates right now in the process? You're saying that for us to advocate, but tell me a little bit more about that.
So Burns and Associates actually asked developmental services across the state to go through a very arduous process of identifying where pretty much every cent went. And Bonnie, I don't know, do you want to talk more detail? Were you involved
Who
with?
hired Burns and Associates?
Dale hired Burns and Associates.
Dale. And did they get legislative approval to do that, or did they just do that?
I don't know.
'Cause I don't ever remember a discussion about this.
I would imagine that they just did it.
And
And
this
not
is
be-
typical of this.
And they might not have
Not to
needed-
be too political, but it's typical of this administration to do things without discussing it with legislators. So, can you,
Not say anything.
I don't want to hold up the meeting.
No, that's
so
all right.
Would you be able to send us an email with the details about Burns and Associates?
Absolutely.
So that we can ask the right questions?
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
what I copy here today may not be accurate in terms of what is happening. But if this is happening throughout the state, and they're coming to look at, reconfigure how you receive payment for, is it just the developmentally disabled group, or is it the whole,
It's for developmental services.
just for developmental services?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember approving something.
I don't know if they would need to be approved by the legislature, but
Well,
perhaps I'm wrong. I mean, honestly, the administration can take steps without it, so that's where I'm confused.
Yeah.
So if you could, and then have
Sure.
your person in Montpelier contact us, I'm
Yeah.
happy to try to
Be happy
deal
to.
with it. But I think trying to understand it today is,
It's pretty complicated, and
Yeah, it sounds
I really wanted to bring
complicated.
it to your attention because it's
well,
really
it sounds like
important.
fee-for-service in the medical versus the medical home type of
Great. So happy to send you information, including kind of where we are with the process,
That
where
would be
they are.
helpful to me.
Yep, it'd be helpful to us
Sure,
too.
the others.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Polly Major, come on up.
Thank you, Lorna.
You're welcome.
Thanks for inviting me here today. Well, the Senator Leahy was invited here today, but he has to be in DC, stuck there with a snowstorm right now. They probably got all of 2 inches. But I'm really glad to have the opportunity to come down and hear more about your programs, your community partnerships, and how you're delivering care to the people you serve. Senator Leahy was in Bennington, I believe end of November, a couple months ago, and he's been excited to see the transformations that are happening in this community. He spent some time in the Putnam Block and is excited to see that. And I want to talk a little bit today about his focus on mental health and pushing forward federal legislation that supports Vermont's mental health system. Some of his priorities in the past has been to see more parity in reimbursement for mental health, parity to physical health. And along those lines, he supported the 21st Century Cures Act that helps strengthen that parity. He, however, knows there's a long way to go, and that we're really seeing a need for more investment in mental health in our communities. He also hears a lot from every sector of health about the importance of workforce and how hard it is to find an adequate workforce for delivering health services. I hear these stories about the incredible commitment of your staff and the work that you're all doing, and know that there are more people out there who can deliver those services if they can find and be supported on a path to gaining the skills to do so. So he's really committed to that as well. He, as everyone does, hears a lot about the impacts of substance use disorder on our communities, and was a strong supporter of the Opioid Response Act, which passed in the last Congress. And that's a sweeping piece of legislation that looks at strengthening the opioid response system for the whole country. But some of the things that it does that I really hope will have an impact here in Vermont is support job training programs for re-entry, support a recovery system that's focused on families and delivering care to the whole family when needed, so that a mother in recovery can stay with her child. I know that's a particular priority for him. He understands that we can create these programs. We also need to ensure that they're funded year after year, and he's the vice chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and in that role he's been focused on ensuring funding for SAMHSA and the health services across the country. I'm sorry I used that acronym. The actual, what it actually stands for is running out of my mind.
Substance abuse, mental health.
Thank you. There are so many federal acronyms, I really apologize for that. But while I'm on the subject of federal appropriations, we are in the 23rd day of a partial federal government shutdown. And while the funding for health services did get across the line and approved for 2019, on time for the first time in 22 years, he knows that the funding for a lot of services that the people you work for rely on are in jeopardy because of the shutdown. The nutrition support, school meals, the SNAP program, also the funding for housing supports and rental assistance. He's keenly aware of how that can affect Vermonters. We hear calls every day about people concerned about the end of these services. Right now, both the rental assistance and the nutrition programs are funded through February, but we need a solution before we see the end of those, because that will cause severe harm in people's lives. So he's working with his colleagues in Congress to emphasize the importance of passing the funding deals that were negotiated in the last Congress. I'm really mainly want to step away from this podium so I can hear your questions to the local legislators here and hear the opportunities in the mental health system in Bennington, and also the gaps, so that as we think creatively about how state policy can meet those needs and also about federal policy, I can take some of those suggestions back to the senator. So I just want to thank you again for bringing me here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
When I came in, I think it was Dan was talking about those offenders, and I wanted to. Many people don't know Senator Leahy's role in the Second Chance Act, and he was instrumental with, I think it was Senator Portman from Ohio, in making that happen. And at the last minute, there were attempts to derail it, and it was Senator Leahy who made sure it got through. And that probably is the funding that you're looking at in order to operate that program. It's directly from Senator Leahy. He deserves a lot of credit for that.
Thank you for mentioning that. Thank you.
Thanks, Polly. Thanks for getting up at some ungodly hour.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I was a few minutes late. There's a lot of school buses on Route 7.
So thank you very much. I'd like to open it up to our legislators to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about it. I'd love to hear how you want to talk about how you want to support mental health.
Sure.
And also anything else that I'd like to talk about and share for a few minutes, and then we can open up to questions.
Should we just go right down the road?
Sure, why not?
So I'm Brian Campion, one of the 2 state senators for Bennington County and Wilmington. I thought I'd start by mentioning something that from Senator Ashe. Many of you may recall Senator Ashe came down here this past summer to talk with all of you. But one of the things Senator Ashe did in the Senate last week was he challenged us as a body, as we're crafting legislation, to be thinking of the 2 Vermonts that exist. And I think all of you know particularly well that 2 Vermonts exist. And he really wants us, of course, to be focusing on the part of Vermont that's really struggling, that people that don't have access to health care as easily. You know, folks that all of you are dealing and working with on a regular basis. People who have food insecurity, people who are, don't have access to higher education. So I thought I would just mention that overall as something that he has challenged the Senate to look at this year, whether we're dealing with, again, I think the suicide issue, opioids, nutrition, all of those kinds of things, and I know my colleagues will talk about that. But I appreciated that he put this out to us, and I'm sure, given all your work and everything that we've already heard this morning, I just wanted to start by sharing that with all of you. I serve on natural resource and energy in the morning, and I serve on finance in the afternoon. So my morning committee, we do a lot of things also connected to young people as it relates to, you may have seen in the paper, lead testing in schools with water. We're moving forward with that. We're also looking at issues around radon in school, students, young people's exposure to toxic substances. So natural resources and energy, although we tend to be thought of as mostly really environmental conservation and energy policy, some of our work definitely relates to some of the kinds of things that we're talking about here today. As it relates to finance and my work, this is the taxing committee, for those of you that don't know, that allows committees like appropriations to spend money. So one of the initiatives we took last year, and I hope we'll move forward again, is we took a small step around Social Security relief. We are an outlier with regard to Social Security taxing. We tax Social Security. And so we, I think, want to continue our efforts as a state to give that relief, to our folks that are receiving Social Security. So we took a small step last year, and I hope we'll continue with that. I don't think there's anything, well, I guess I'll just mention 2 other things that were vetoed last year that are connected to the 2 Vermonts, and I would anticipate both of these bills being sent back to the governor. That's the minimum wage, moving up to $15 an hour over a 5-year period. Also paid family leave that would give families an opportunity, access to leave work without the possibility of losing their job, that kind of thing. So these are, again, things that I would anticipate. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate certainly everything all of you do, and grateful to be here. And I'll pass it on to Dick, and afterward take questions.
I'm Dick Sears, State Senator of Bennington County. I chair the Senate Judiciary Committee, which has deals with criminal law and some civil law. We did bills, and we'll do again. For example, who's going to pay for PFOA contamination? Should it be the polluter, the taxpayer, or the victim of the pollution? We also do assortment of criminal laws. One of our subjects that I think comes closest to what the group that you're working with would be expungements, trying to work with our state's attorneys and the defense side of the table on how do we get people who have a period of time when they have committed no crimes, they have been average citizens and taxpayers, how do we get those records expunged for old crimes? And I know I was talking with Erica Mathage, our state's attorney, about a particular case where a guy has 4 felonies, she's ready to expunge them. He doesn't have $360 to pay the fee to get them expunged. So those are some of the bills we deal with. And the afternoon committee is the Senate Appropriations Committee, where we deal with the budget, and it's a difficult task. The last 2 years, we've been asked to come in with a budget without an increase in taxes and without an increase in fees. And somebody may say, well, that's okay, you can do that, but it's a juggling act, and it makes it difficult on those of you who provide services in the community. And I need help in understanding how Vermont should go forward with its mental health system. I believe there's, our 2 most serious problems, social problems in the state are the opioid crisis and the mental health crisis. And I believe that the mental health crisis is one where we look at it as a structure, and you all here in the community may need help with people who just, need some term of hospitalization or whatever. And yet, we don't know how many beds we need. We continue to argue about that. We have a proposal last year to create a campus for mental health, corrections, and other groups. Is that a good idea, bad idea? If we spend a lot of money on mental health beds, how many dollars will we have left back here in the community? So I think we as legislators need your advice, frankly, on where we should be going with this mental health system. I mean, I go into the emergency room and I hear the complaint from the emergency room doctor that they're dealing with mental health crises and they have somebody with a heart attack in the next room. And how do they deal with both? And the difficulty that our law enforcement faces in dealing with these mental health crisis problems. So we have a crisis. We need to deal with it in a more logical way. And yet we as legislators are asked to approve plans or budgets. And this is the first I heard in the developmental side in that other group. But I would say I need your help, and I think everyone at this table needs your help on your thoughts, and includes our police, our state's attorneys, and other groups. Where should we be going in terms of the best mental health care in the country? And I see here you're providing over 6,000 psychiatric assessments statewide, saving Medicaid $77 million annually. That would probably pay for a lot of beds. Yet that money's probably going into bridges.
Right.
That's all I can say.
Thanks, Dick.
Good morning, my name is Jim Carroll. I'm also a selectman here in Bennington. And I think Dick hit it right on the head. We need to know what you need. Going to the legislature, it's not a steep learning curve, it's vertical. I mean, there's so much to learn. And I do want to say that I have some experience with UCS. You may remember my parents, Joe and June Carroll.
Oh, yes.
And we had many wards of UCS come through our house, and it was possibly one of the most rewarding things that our family ever did. And I hope that those of you in this room will encourage other people to take those people into your home. Now, with respect to the committee that I serve on, is Commerce. And one of the things that we oversee is workforce development, which would go to getting people integrated into the community as well as jobs for you. So really, that's all I have to say today. But thank you all for your devotion to many people who we might consider the least of our brothers and sisters.
Thank you. And I remember, I worked with your parents. I remember your parents fondly. They did beautiful work.
For those who don't know me, I'm Tim Corcoran, and I represent Bennington District 2-1, and I currently serve on the Transportation Committee. And I think that's pretty obvious. We have a $650+ million budget, and we try to do the best we can funding our roads, bridges, airports, and whatnot. But two of the things that I think are I think go hand in hand is obviously the public transit. We try to do the best to fund the local transit providers. That's the key access to get people to the appointments on time, and to and from. And also a new thing that's sort of on our radar is over, I don't know, probably the last 5 years or so, dealing with suicide. There's a particular bridge up in Quechee where it seems like it's quite popular for, unfortunately, people taking their lives. And so we were trying to come up with, when these bridges are designed, there should be a policy or some type of plan that, anticipates potential, issues that may arise. So whether you got to put a net up or, putting up higher fences, that, that's coming more and more dialogue in our committees once we're, moving forward on a particular bridge that may attract people. So that's sort of a new thing that we're dealing with in transportation. But overall, it's going to be an interest year in transportation. It's the first time in 9 years we've had a new chair appointed, and I think the shift is going to be solely on climate change policy. So you're going to see maybe more funding towards electric vehicles, charging stations and whatnot, and policies around carbon emissions. So that's going to be a sort of a shift from what we've done in the past as far as transportation. But as overall, as a whole in the body, it was sort of a kumbaya week there. Everybody was happy, listening to the governor's directions and then the speaker's directions. And next week we'll be getting the budget, so we'll sort of get the devils are going to be in the details and see what that entails, and I'm sure heads are going to butt a little bit, and so we'll see how that goes. This year the governor's, I think, is going to have to step up to the plate and listen more seriously, as Brian mentioned, the paid family leave and the minimum wage. And he's not going to be able to just quite dismiss those as he's done in the past. I think he's really going to have to step up on a lot of issues that the Democrats might have, and really take this serious consideration, seeing how most likely there's going to be a super majority to override potential veto. So that's a huge factor in this year's, the next 2 years. See how that unfolds. So with that, I'll pass it on down the line.
Yes, sir.
I'm David Durfee from Shaftesbury. Just started in the legislature last week. As Catherine that's at the table here, in the same position. A couple of people have mentioned the committees that they're on, and I'm not sure that everybody's aware of this, but those of us in the House we serve on one committee, and we spend most of our time, I would say, doing the work of that committee. And I'm on the healthcare committee. I was appointed to the healthcare committee. I asked for that committee, having heard a lot of conversation during the summer and fall from people I was talking to about many of the issues that have come up here today. The opioid crisis, mental health care specifically, funding of mental health care. I would say that generally my position on funding and budgeting is that Vermonters are asking for certain services to get things done. We need to be prepared to fund the things that we say we want to have done. And if mental health care is a priority and is underfunded, which is, I think, something most of us here would agree with, let's find the funding. If that means raising revenues, and for the past couple of years, the position has been we will not increase revenues, we will not increase taxes or fees, we need to examine that position. I'll just say that. I just also wanted to say, I was not expecting a group this size. It was impressive to walk into the room and see so many of you, to hear your stories. I know that there's a lot of information, and I would just echo what Dick and Jim said. I certainly need to learn more, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that. This is a good start. I like the way you structured it, and hearing the actual stories of people is helpful. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Mary Morrissey, and I represent District 22 here in Bennington. First of all, and most importantly, thank you to all of you for the amazing work you do in our community and our region, along with your partners, the Bennington Police Department, or all law enforcement, Town of Bennington, the rescue squad who's here today, and all of your other partners who do an amazing job. I sit on the Institutions and Corrections Committee, and this is my second biennium on that committee. And we deal with many of the issues that we've talked about here today. As Dick Sears talked about, there was a proposal last year for a project to build more of a complex for the mental health beds that our committee really was not totally in favor of. And as usual, most of these projects are looked to be located up north. And I strongly advocated in my committee that why are we not looking at central Vermont or even in southern Vermont? Because for our individuals to be treated or to receive help, they're having to really get out of their comfort zone even more by traveling, a long distance, and then there's this support system with their families or friends or whatever their support system quite often can't be making those trips as often as they'd like to a facility like that. So our committee was able to add some beds for the opioid substance addiction beds, as well as mental health beds at Brattleboro Retreat, also some in Rutland, but we have a long ways to go. And I think it would be very important for us to hear, or I would love to get the information, and possibly from you, Lorna, or whoever else can help me with that. The numbers that we receive in our committee seem so low as to what the beds are needed. And sometimes they'll say, I need 16 beds, and we could probably fill that in 5 minutes with the need we have here. And that's for statewide. So I really would love to hear what you would feel that even Bennington County region would need for us to be sensible with what we're actually looking at. We also do deal with corrections reform, and last year we passed the bill MAT, which is starting, and it's had a few little bumps in the road, but we're going to be looking at addressing some of the issues. The MAP program is medical treatment for those incarcerated, whether they're getting another substance or if they were on opioids. They are going to be treated and also get the counseling that they need within the correction system to be able to have it in the correction setting, as well as a plan for when they come out. And so I was very interested to hear Dan talk about the I-Plan, and I'll obviously want to talk more with you on that. I guess I would just ask one question of you. Do other parts of the state do a similar plan like this?
Yes and no. There are other, DFC has other partnerships with providers for things like transitional housing, but as far as we know, our plans are not in the state.
Because I think I would love to have you come and testify, or by phone or in person to Montpelier, so that we can hear the work you're doing, because it is critical, as we all know, for those kind of transferring from a corrections setting back into our communities. Really need that support and a system that's going to work, so that the recidivism doesn't keep happening for them. So Dan, thank you for the work you're doing. We also deal with this small little issue of clean water, which is millions and millions of dollars as well, and also our committee deals with state construction projects around this state, and anything from one of the last real major projects here in Bennington was our state building, and that's been done. But it's those kind of buildings and things that we deal with. So we have a great deal to work on this year and more, with certainly understanding the strong need for the mental health beds, as well as the opioid substance addiction beds as well. So we're always very available, so we would like to hear from you on the needs that you're having, which I know are massive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Is it my turn? Hi, I'm Chris Bates. I represent Bennington 2-1. I'm starting my second week in Montpelier, which is quite an experience if anybody's been there to see that. I'm going to keep mine really short. Some of you may know me from Bennington Unwrapped, a TV show that I do, and Outdoor Secrets Unwrapped. And I am on the Fish, Wildlife, and Natural Resource Committee, which I'm really excited to get started with that. And I think this whole week we'll be able to do that. So, and as far as the rest, I have a lot to learn, so I'm turning it over to Nelson.
First of all,
in other words, we'll want to hear from all of them.
well, I thank you for what I've heard so far, and appreciate the invite. I'm serving on government ops. I am new, as Chris is. The learning curve, as Dave said, is straight up, with a couple of hooks up there to try to slow you down while you're learning. But what I'm learning from government ops is, it seems like when they handed the sheet of what we did, we touch on everything, sort of, which makes it a lot harder in the learning curve. I spent my first day there listening to the Secretary of State talk for half the day, and then the Treasurer for the other half. The Secretary of State was telling us how he was saving us money, and the Treasurer was asking me for how much she could get. So, and it certainly wasn't enough for what the Secretary was saving from the state. So that's the beginning of my learning curve, is that certainly with far reaches in the government that I'll have to address. But I am concerned about PFOA. I signed on to something where somebody's putting in a bill to try and help people recover any medical costs or stuff they might have coming from that. I don't know when it'll be submitted, but I know the person was passing around. Chris, I think you signed on there too. And basically, minimum wage, I've been for minimum wage for a long time. You know, I'm sure in the cases which you work on, people are struggling because they don't have enough resources. They don't have what they need. So I think we're there, but at the same time, I'm realizing that I can't ask the person that's running the small shop paying somebody $12 to give a $3 an hour raise. I think we're going to do it in steps. That's my thinks on this when it comes to it. But again, I'm new, I'm learning. I will support a lot of what I heard today. I think it's the right direction to go in. After all, I have my sister-in-law that works in this service somewhere, and basically...
and there she is right there.
And basically, I have a daughter that works through the state in helping families find jobs and stuff. So I understand the struggles because I hear it a lot, and I'm hoping that I can be helping changing some of that for those people. And I guess that's where I'll be. Thank you for having me.
So I know we're short on time, but I do want to take a few minutes if there are questions, comments, anything you want to ask or the legislators or tell the legislators. Yes?
I just want to congratulate Tom Simic. I see him here. You know, I read in the paper where he had retired, but it doesn't appear to be completely. But Tom has been an expert in the field of substance abuse and addictions, and was so helpful to us back when I used to operate 204 Depot. And a terrific job, and I wanted to just recognize Tom for a second. I thought he had completely retired.
You know, he
I
can't
guess
go.
the banner got that a little bit off.
He's actually, he's staying on and doing some very specific things for us, which we really, really
That's
appreciate.
great. But I couldn't resist saying thank you, Tom, for your years of service to this community.
Thanks, Dick.
Yes.
Pleasure.
Just wanted to say quickly, hi, I'm Andrea Malinowski, and I'm with Rise Vermont, which is a statewide health initiative to help all Vermonters embrace healthy lifestyles. And when I first came on board in August, it was about how can we improve the health, you know, fitness opportunities, healthy cooking. It's really come to my attention as a partner with United Counseling Service that until we address mental health, wellness, homelessness, all of the issues, the underlying issues of our overall health, that we as a society won't necessarily become healthy. So I encourage you anytime that you have an opportunity to think about mental health and mental wellness affecting population health to really give it thought and its proper credence. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I will.
Yes.
So I am Dara Zink. I am here on behalf of Project Against Violent Encounters. So we're the domestic violence group and sexual awareness group here in Bennington. And I just wanted to thank you guys for coming. And I also wanted to say that along with ACEs, we see ACEs affecting the vast majority of our clients. And the mental health aspect of that, we are looking to partner with UCS coming up. We've had a couple meetings to develop some programming and educating you about domestic violence as well, and what that looks like and how we can all work together to stop that, hopefully, someday. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, comments,
So,
questions? Yes.
so when I just would say that one of the issues that we're seeing in the law enforcement world that is climbing relatively quickly is that we are dealing with youth and mental crisis far more than we ever have. And it's really a shame. We're responding to elementary schools for 7 and 8-year-old kids out of control, you know, that are just, it's saddening, it's heartbreaking, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with all of these things. We're law enforcement officers. We're not clinicians, we're not counselors, and we do the best that we can with these kids. Meanwhile, everybody stands back. You've got a student that's got something in their hand, they're gonna hurt somebody, they're swinging things around, and unfortunately, you know, you have to go hands-on to remove things at times. It's not all about, well, let's just talk to little Johnny and maybe he'll put that 3-foot yardstick down and, yeah, 3 foot in the yard, right? That yardstick down, right? So, you know, we need to find ways to deal with the issues in our local schools. And part of it is, you know, when I went to school, I'll date myself, I mean, you know, the principal used to come out and he used to do bad things. I don't condone that. I mean, we don't want principals going hands-on, but the bottom line is we need to get into the schools with your programs, and we need to teach the faculty and staff at the schools how to deal with these kids. We didn't have paras when I was in school. They have paras. You know, we need to deal with the entire staff at these schools. Maybe bring your programs there in the summer or on these in-service days or whatever the schools have. That's what we need to do, and we need to focus on dealing with these kids that have mental health issues. The other piece of it is family. These kids are acting out for a reason. We have to get integrated into the families. We need to work with the families and figure out where we're going wrong. This is not a Bennington problem. This is not a Vermont problem. This is a nationwide program. There's too many families that are broken, and we need to find a way to fix that, work with these kids, because if we don't fix it now, they won't be good members in our community down the road. I've worked with Dick and Mary and others up here. We try to find ways of keeping people out of the system. Right, Dick? We try to keep people from going to jail. We try to put them through diversion programs and things like that to give them that chance. And if we don't do something now, we're never going to solve this. And we need to focus on this. And I'm asking all of you to please look at these kids, look at the struggles that they're having. It's great that we give them food to take home over Christmas break. That's not the answer. We need to get involved in with these kids and their families and figure out what's going on and work with them to be successful. So please think about that.
Yeah. So I am going to ask you for a real ask, which is already, the legislation's already been drafted. I'm on a number of committees with the Department of Children and Families, with local opioid and addiction groups. And one of the things we've been working on and that I've been an advocate for, and Senator Sears knows this, is that 18, 19-year-old population. The struggle that I see, because I kind of have the bird's eye view, I deal with almost every section of UCS, and then I deal with law enforcement, and then I see kind of how it all plays out. And at this point, I've been around long enough, so I'm seeing the people that are just coming back and where the holes are. I think there really needs to be, when Paul talks about getting involved with the families, I completely am a proponent of families staying together, but there are a lot of situations where we have kids that are 12, 13, 14 years old. The parents are unable or unwilling or don't have the tools, don't have the resources to parent that child. That's where my office gets involved. DCF needs to be able to go in and assist with getting services in the home to keep the kid at home, but with as much support as they can. But in the event that they can't, we need programs that really are a complete, holistic, looking at every aspect of what we can do for this child. And you know, like Dick's heard me preach about this multiple times, but I mean, with kids, we're really talking about, it's not just that they're not going to school or they're fighting at school or that they have, it's a whole problem. It's kids that maybe they don't know where they're sleeping that night, maybe they don't know where they're getting their next meal, they haven't had a shower. School's like the lowest thing on their list of concerns, getting to school. However, school's the only place we can really have that interaction and create those teams of support. And I am a fan of keeping people out of the court system as much as possible, just because it's not an appropriate place for mental health. It's not an appropriate place for kids. We really need to be looking at, though, how we can get these services in place that don't involve arresting someone. I regularly get calls, and everyone here at UCS knows that it'll be someone who's homeless, who's freezing to death, who needs medical attention. And my direction to the police is find something to charge him with so I can get him into court. Because I don't have any other tools in the toolbox to help that person get connected, get to the ER, get to Broward Retreat, get where they need to be. This agency is phenomenal as far as I can pick up the phone and call anybody here. I talk with DS quite a bit. To just give them a heads up about stuff that's going on. But you know, when you're looking at any of the legislation, and particularly any of the funding that deals with youthful offender status, 18 and 19-year-olds, the expungement project is a big one of my kind of pet projects that I have a great interest in. But those are the legislative issues that are really going to impact how we're dealing with kids and that population and families.
Come on up Wednesday, and we're starting on that report from your 4-member group.
Really?
State's attorneys.
Okay. I'm going to be there Wednesday. Anyway,
well, we'll
so
see you Wednesday.
all right.
Thanks, Erica.
I've got a question. You know, more to Erica and Paul's point. What would you need to do, or need from us, so that you could implement and create a program that could train teachers to talk kids down instead of calling in the police and hauling them off?
So we would need.
Because that's got to be a trauma.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the unfortunate thing is that kids, instead of seeing the police as allies, they often are starting to see them as enemies, people to be afraid of. It absolutely adds to trauma when a police is responding or when somebody is responding inappropriately. We do provide training within the schools. As Katie was talking about, she's in there with the schools with pre-service and in-service trainings and consultation to schools, going in and providing that training.
One point that I'd like to make, and I'm sure you would develop some sort of protocol, Paul, but I want to ask you directly, Paul. Do you go in with a classroom full of other kids and have to extract the child?
It all depends. I mean, I don't want to use the word extract because it sounds like we work in a correctional facility, but you're right. So it depends on.
What I'm getting at is I would hope the teachers would clear the room.
There are kids that are acting out, and generally the teachers move the other kids out of the room, and we deal with it that way. We bring in the rescue squad from time to time to do transports because it is very traumatizing, not just for the child that's involved, but for the other kids. Listen, we have done an amazing thing, I think, in this community. We have school resource officers at the CDC, at the high school, at the middle school. We have an officer periodically at Van L. And, and there is a plan in place to put deputies in some of the other elementary schools if the budget passes. So it's all well and good to have law enforcement there to protect the kids, because really that's why we're there, and to work with the kids in different programs, not to take the kids down because they're acting out. I think that we really need to focus on different ways of dealing with that, and that's what the faculty and staff at the school should be for.
Right, and I think the ACEs training, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the main problem that we run into with getting that training to the schools is they only have X number of training hours a year.
Yeah.
And so I'm on the board of the CAC, the Child Advocacy Center, and every time we mention something about we need to do more training in this area, it's really like a competition. Who's going to get that valuable time? Because they only have so many hours.
Well, and I think the unfortunate thing is that, I think one of the pieces of something that's really important is that we have to change the culture, and we have to make a decision to do that. So when you have all these competing trainings and things that are required, and you have an ACEs training that you need to bring in, first of all, a one-day training is not going to do it. So a one and done can't happen. This is a whole culture shift in the way that students, or teachers interact with students. It's not about the student changing, it's about the adults changing how they interact with students. And so that's a huge shift in the culture and how we work. And so creating a trauma-informed school, creating a trauma-informed community takes a lot of work and a shift in how we interact with each other on a day-to-day basis. So it's not just one training and Katie's happy to come, but it's beyond that and continuation of that.
And one of the things we've been trying to work on that is just an example of like an ACEs that would be if the police are called to someone's house and 2 or 3 kids live in that home, the school people are notified. The police were at their home last, so that they can make that, the school personnel can make that connection.
Right.
So that you don't have an 8-year-old walking around all day with this kind of information in their head, well, the police were at my house last night, and the teachers aren't really understanding why this child is having a completely horrible day, and like what, and no one's been speaking with that child because they don't know.
Right.
So it can be as simple as that.
And how maybe does mental health come into that conversation too, around those 3 kids were there, can a mental health worker come to the school and have a conversation with the kid and look at how you can help talk them through some of that stuff and do some play or whatever the case may be. But
and not to beat a dead horse, but the 800, the online, like the hotline, the centralized intake for DCF, I've said this publicly multiple times, I hate that system. I hate it for multiple reasons. This is like one of the biggest reasons I hate it, because I want to talk to the police. They're going to tell me so-and-so has 3 kids in the house. I want to pick up the phone and call a local DCF worker or a local mental health worker and say, we need to get services to this child. We need to make that connection and close that circle. And we can't do that because I tell the police, call the DCF hotline, and then somebody in Waterbury goes, well, was the child actually struck?
Right.
Oh, they weren't? Oh, we're not opening that. So then nothing happens unless I call folks directly and say, hey, I don't know if I can tell you this, but, these people
Yes.
were, so it's just very
You
frustrating.
can tell us anything, we might not be able to tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Erica,
Hey.
Erica,
No, go ahead,
Never
Jen.
mind, go ahead.
So one of the things that I can tell you is that when I have had the opportunity to come into schools is that the word has really gotten out there. So that's led from one particular school to wanting this training to all of a sudden the entire SVSU to now it's branched out into Arlington, and now DDA has been calling me because what I find in these trainings is that the teachers and the parents that receive it really have those aha moments about why is it's not a discipline issue, it's a biologic response from trauma that actually causes some of these behavioral reactions. So it's getting that understanding from there that can then help the teachers dictate how they're going to then interact with that child on a daily basis. And I can tell you, every time I've gone to a school and given this training, I've always had people come up to me later and say, this is great, but when are you going to give this to the principals? And then a principal that I gave it to said, great, now when are you going to give it to the school board? Because they want everyone to be on board and really have this information so that they can start changing some of the policies that are happening in the schools. I also, I'm on the Family Emergency Services beeper for youth, usually about 1 day a week. And the responses that I go to in the schools, because the majority of the calls I've been out to are for schools, it varies in every school. So one school I may go to and they may already have the police there. Some schools I may go to and the protocol is to wait until I get there and then decide if the police are going to be called. So it's very different and it's not uniform, and I never know which type of situation I'm going to be walking into at that moment, depending on what that school's individual policy is. So I think helping schools to try to create a uniform decision on how do we actually respond to emergency situations so that the best workers can know exactly what's going to happen when we get there, whether the police are going to be called or they're going to be waiting, what type of system is uniform throughout the school district, I think would be extremely helpful to us as workers that go out on these calls.
That's key.
Thanks.
Beth, we'll end with you. How's that?
Thanks. I'll be so fast. I'm Beth Wallace. I'm the Family Community Partnership Manager for Bennington County Head Start, Early Head Start. And we were fortunate enough to get a federal grant that allowed us to start serving infants and toddlers. This is our second year of that programming. What that allows us to do is work with, potentially with children and families for 5 years versus 1 or 2 years. And when I hear people talking about working with the families, partnering with DCF, health, that is all that Head Start encompasses. It's not just childcare and education, but it's working with families. Every family gets a family support worker who I oversee. They also have a health worker who's helping them get not only the kids' health outcomes met, but also the families. That said, so in my role, I oversee enrollments, I oversee mental health and the family services. Super excited about being able to serve infants through preschoolers because we know that early intervention staves off those more intense interventions later on. On Friday, I pulled a report and I have 40 infants and toddlers on my wait list right now. That was just Friday, and that was just for Early Head Start. That wasn't for Head Start.
How do they get referred to?
Anybody can send a referral to us. Families can call us, reach out workers, mental health clinicians, anybody. So any opportunity you have to support expansion in services for us, we have programs and partnerships from Pownell to Manchester, and the need is so great that if we can get in there and start working with folks from very early on, that's the best investment.
Yeah.
Could you email on that one too? that ties in with what Erica and I were just talking about for Wednesday morning. So if you could get me that. What's happened, there was 14 million allocated to try to deal with the opiate crisis in toddlers particularly, and how we deal with that. And that 14 million is over a 3 or 4 year period. And we had recommendations on how to spend about 2 million of it by DCF, state's attorneys, court and defense side. And I don't quite agree with 900,000 of it, and so there is a possibility to try to reassign some of that money. The 900,000 was having a person with a parent working in peer review in all of our recovery centers, in the 12 recovery centers, to help parents deal with it. So I'm not sure that that's something that all of us support, so that can be reallocated. So.
Well, go where the children are. That's your best
Pardon me?
bet. Go where the children are. That's your best bet. So being able to provide investment in kids is going to help with the opioid crisis in the end.
Anyway, that's what the report is.
Good. We'll get you information. Good. Thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you.
Great discussion.